In the summer of 1995, I received a phone call from a woman who had a set of tapes that she wanted to trade for a set of tapes that I had on Raw and Living Foods. And back then I had a set of 4 tapes on Raw and Living Foods, and I was always up for a barter. So I sent her my tapes, she sent me her tapes. I started listening to her tapes. On these tapes was the story of David Hudson, an Arizona dirt farmer who'd stumbled across a very interesting stratus of minerals in the basalt rock that normally lines the Arizona floor. Whenever you drive across the state of Arizona and you look out the window of your car, you'll see these rocks just sitting on the floor of the Arizona desert. That's basalt rock, and they actually contain gold and silver and other precious metals in very small amounts, but enough that if you're out there as an Arizona dirt farmer, they're worth investigating, and that's what David Hudson was doing. He was investigating these minerals through a number of different methods, the main one being the heat leach cyanide method, where he was spraying hot cyanide on the basalt rock, taking that liquid, running it through charcoal, and then doing a metal separation to separate out the gold and silver. And you can make a couple $1,000s a month doing that, so it's worthwhile to do. Anyway, he found out that there was also another substance that was coming off that was similar to gold and silver but different, and didn't analyze as gold and silver, didn't analyze as precious metals at all, actually analyzed as aluminum silicates, but actually wasn't anything to do with silica or aluminum. And they call this in the Arizona dirt farming community and in the precious metals community, they call it ghost gold. And David Hudson in these tapes was describing his story of how he spent $8.5 million in 19 years of his life trying to figure out what in the heck ghost gold was, because he found out that nobody actually knew. As he went higher and higher and higher up the chain, from the locals to the state level to the great professors of colleges and universities, he found out that actually no one could identify what the substance was, and it's always been there. It's not like something new was discovered. This is a substance that's always been there. It's actually always been known about, but was never actually identified. The problem is that these substances don't fit into the periodic table of the elements. And when I was in 8th and 9th grade, I learned about the periodic table of the elements. It starts with hydrogen and then helium and then lithium and builds up from there, and you develop the entire mineral profile of all matter. And these are the minerals that we always talk about in nutrition, like calcium and magnesium and iodine and selenium and phosphorus and sulfur. These are all minerals in the periodic table of the elements. But what David Hudson discovered is that the periodic table of the elements is incomplete. There are more minerals in nature than exist in the periodic table of the elements. And he named them Ormes, orbitally rearranged monoatomic elements. And that became colloquially called, in the community of people who are investigating these things, Ormus. And that's where the original phrase comes from. Now, I met with David Hudson recently, actually just a few weeks ago, to find out his latest research. And he's been on this project at least since 1980. That's a long period of time, a lot of investigation, a lot of research, actually from before that, even into the 70s. And he's a very smart man, very intelligent. And what he is now working on are the standards for these substances. So you could take a mineral substrate like basalt rock and find out actually what's there, not what we think is there, which is maybe a little fraction of gold and a little fraction of silver and the other substances that are found in rock like hydrogen and oxygen and silica and carbon, but also to actually nail down exactly how many of these Ormus elements are present. Well, one of the things that David Hudson discovered in his research is that as he began to isolate these particular unique minerals, they had very strange and bizarre properties when they became isolated. They would rapidly gain weight and then lose weight. If they were heated up, there could be radical changes in mass. And that was the beginning of his realization that he had stumbled across a renewal of alchemy. And alchemy is taught to us as a juvenile form of chemistry. In the old days, you did alchemy because you didn't know about chemistry. That's kind of how we're taught in school. But in fact, it may be the opposite. Alchemy may be a very advanced form of chemistry, and our chemistry that we have today may be very much degraded. David Hudson named these elements the female elements, and that is they're elusive. They don't withstand the cut, burn, poison therapies that we usually use. When we analyze minerals, many times we will burn up the mineral and then analyze what's there. We'll burn up the rock or the stone or the food or whatever it is. And these minerals can become oxidized and they flip like popcorn and can become metals. And this may be how metals come into existence. So these, as I understand them, are infolded forms of metals. So you can have an Ormus copper, for example, that when it gets oxidized under intense heat, it doesn't just go through chemical changes like what we're taught in school. The mineral actually goes through an atomic or nuclear change and becomes something else. It becomes a metal. So Ormus substances, in my understanding, are substances that exist in the earth, and we don't really understand what's in the earth. We understand the atmosphere because we live in the atmosphere and we walk on the earth. But when we look into the earth, it's a little bit different. There's some different rules that apply because there's not this intense oxidation of the atmosphere occurring in the earth. And there are minerals in the earth that come up through volcanic activity, through with the action of the ocean, through earthquakes, through the erosion process, through rivers, creeks, and streams cutting into rock, through the action of plants that then get brought into the life force that can develop into what we call Ormus elements in plants, in humans, in animals. And these minerals may actually be the most important minerals. They may be more important than the oxidized mineral supplements that we've taken, the zinc supplements we've taken, the copper supplements we've taken, whatever supplements we've taken. There may be actually a whole nother level. In fact, I believe there actually is, and the evidence shows that there is, of pre-infolded minerals, the more of the way that they are in the earth, that we should take instead as mineral supplements. And I went to work way back when on developing my own Ormus product, and we focused on gold because it had such a long history. And actually all these years later, upon talking with David Hudson, he actually stated gold is really the way to go. And that's how we developed this Ormus gold product, which appears to work topically. Wherever you apply it, you can use it internally, but topically is the best form.